Hey everybody, what's going on? Well, I think it's about time for another update on my Porsche Cayman GTS. I think I've figured out what was causing one of the problems that I was having with the car. I mentioned in my previous video that I was getting an error message for the parking brake if I don't drive the car for a week or more. Sometimes I would start the car and the parking brake would refuse to disengage and give me that error message. I'd have to turn off the car, do a restart, and then the parking brake would release. Yes, while that trick did seem to work to get it to release, that was super annoying because that is a workaround and not a fix. So I brought the car in to the dealership for its first annual service, and I described the problem. They said that they would take a look at it, and as I shared in that previous video, they did the oil change, they ran some diagnostics on the car, and they gave it back to me saying that they couldn't find anything wrong with the parking brake. And yes, the same error kept coming back after I brought the car home. So quite frankly, the service department was pretty useless. Well, maybe not entirely useless, because something that they wrote in the service paperwork did give me a clue about what to try and what might be causing the problem. You see, every time they run diagnostics on the car, they connect a float charger. I believe that is just another name for a trickle charger. So, as part of their process, they make sure that the car's battery is properly charged. So could it be that with all the sophisticated electronics of the car, the battery voltage drops low enough from sitting around for a week that it could cause this parking brake error? I think some of the viewers of this channel also suggested this in the comments. One of you said that I wasn't driving the car often enough, and maybe that's true. Another one of you said to make sure to keep the car on a trickle charger whenever I wasn't using it. So I decided to test this theory. I had to be out of town, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to drive my Cayman for about 2 or 3 weeks. And I knew from experience that if I just let the car sit for that long, it was almost guaranteed to give me that same parking error when I next tried to start it up. So I hooked the car up to my NOCO Genius 1 trickle charger, and I let it sit for a couple of weeks while I was gone. The NOCO charger is a slow 1 amp trickle charger that is kind of perfect for this kind of long-term charging. By the way, the NOCO charger comes with standard alligator clips for hooking it up to the battery, but NOCO also sells a 12-volt socket adapter that I found works pretty well with the car, letting you plug directly into the 12-volt socket that is in the passenger side footwell. This is way more convenient than having to pop open the frunk and pull off the plastics underneath to access the battery. I know some of you are going to say that you should use the specialty Porsche battery maintainer or the one made by C-Tech that everyone says works just as well as the Porsche branded one. But I already have the NOCO, and I figured it was worth a shot. And guess what? It works just like you'd expect. It has an AGM battery charging mode, which is what you need for the Porsche battery. And I saved some money together with the adapter. I paid less than $50 for this charger, so totally worth it. So I come back 3 weeks later and I see that my battery is still fully charged. So I go ahead and try starting the car, and guess what? Success! The car no longer gave me a parking brake error. Since then, I have driven the car several times, and the parking brake error has not come back as long as I keep the battery topped off. So if I'm not going to be driving the car for a few days, I think I'm just going to keep it hooked up to the trickle charger. So hopefully that is the fix, and I've solved one of the problems that I have with the car. But I have to say, I'm pretty astounded by this revelation for two reasons. First of all, how is it that this is a problem for a modern car? Don't tell me that if you don't start or drive a Porsche for more than 2 or 3 weeks, it's normal for it to give errors or malfunction like this. If you think that is acceptable or that it's somehow on me because I didn't drive it for that long, I call bullshit. Cars don't and shouldn't work like that. I have 3 other cars that also sat for the same 3 weeks. All 3 of those cars started up just fine with no electrical issues, even without being on a charger. And perhaps even more relevant, my friend Oleg also has the same car as me, a 2024 Cayman GTS that sits in his garage, and he doesn't keep his car on a charger. He took delivery of his new car a few months before I did, and he has had 0 issues with his car. It starts up fine after a month of being parked, and he has no parking brake errors. The weird part of all this, though, is my car cranks and starts up fine the whole time. I would think that if the voltage was actually low enough to be a problem, that the car would have trouble starting or give me some other indication that something was wrong with the battery voltage, but no clue at all, just a parking brake malfunction. So what do you make of that? The other reason I am so astounded is, if this is such an obvious or common issue, then why didn't the dealership service departments that I've brought the car to tell me the likely cause of the problem? They could have just told me that the car needs to be driven often or kept on a charger when not being used. They might have even been able to recommend and sell me a Porsche battery maintainer. But instead, all they did was say, nope, we tested the car and it seems fine, and gave it back to me without anything more than bring it back if it keeps doing it. This was actually less than useless. This was a waste of my time. I brought the car into 2 different dealerships, and neither one of them was able to figure anything out. That is, to say the least, a disappointing experience. So, what do you think? Is this a normal problem, or is this a unique problem with my car? I tend to think that it must be something wrong specifically with my car, because like I said, my other friend's car hasn't had the same problem. But based on how the dealerships have treated me so far, I don't have any confidence that if I bring the car into them, that they will be able to address it or figure out what the problem is. Instead, I had to diagnose the problem myself and come up with my own solution or workaround. All this to say, it really does seem like I'm not driving my Porsche enough. And maybe that's a problem. I should drive it more often. I am doing my best to enjoy driving this car and taking it out on the weekends whenever I can. But the reality is, I'm sometimes busy, and I also have several other cars too, and I drive those cars as well. Maybe, as I said in my other video, I should think about selling off one of my cars. But I enjoy them all so much that that's not really a good answer either. All this does make me think about how expensive owning this Porsche is, though, and whether or not I'm getting enough value for the money. Let's do the math. Last year, I drove it 5,200 miles, and my monthly loan payment is about $1,600. That's $19,200 a year, plus $2,864 a year for insurance, and I spent $1,550 on gas. You do the math, and that is $23,614 divided by 5,200 miles, and that comes out to $4.54 a mile. Oh, but wait, I forgot to include the cost of maintenance going forward as well. And here's the kicker. The maintenance costs for my Cayman GTS are much higher than I expected. I mean, the very first year, maintenance is included free, but that just amounts to an oil change and what they describe as general maintenance. And it would have cost $1,000 if it wasn't included for year one. But after that, beginning with the 2-year maintenance and onward, it starts to get ridiculously expensive. Now, maybe it's on me that I didn't look into it that closely, but let's take a look at it now. You can go to Porsche's website, and this is the page for their PSMP, Porsche Scheduled Maintenance Plans. And they spell it out there what your annual maintenance costs would look like if you brought in the car for each annual service for the first 5 years. This is their way of trying to get you to prepay for all the maintenance all at once. And I suppose it actually makes some sense to get this if you intend to keep your Porsche for 5 years or more and want to keep your warranty intact. When the finance guy is trying to sell you this plan, they'll tell you 2 reasons why it's a good idea. First is that it locks in the pricing for services now, so that if their prices go up in the future, and realistically that is likely over time, you're paying the lower price now. The second reason is that you can then add that cost of the PSMP to the amount that you're financing. A minimal benefit, really, but I can see how it is more convenient to do so. Now, I didn't end up buying the PSMP when I bought my Cayman, but now that I look at it, I am thinking it might make some sense to do so. Fortunately, I still have time because my car is fairly new, so the dealerships will still offer to sell me the PSMP. And so it was that when I brought my car in for the 1-year service, the service advisor offered to sell me the 5-year plan for the low price of $9,000. That is discounted pricing, he told me. Wait, what? At first glance, the chart says the 718 maintenance would add up to $6,610 for the 5-year plan. What kind of German math are they using to say that my service is discounted at $9K? Well, this is where you had to read the fine print. You see, I didn't get the regular 718 Cayman. I have the Cayman GTS 4.0. That means that it has the same high-performance 4-liter engine as the GT4. And guess what? That means it is considered a 718 specialty car and subject to the higher pricing for maintenance. The same higher price you'd pay for bringing in a GT4, a Spider, or a GT4 RS. Which means the 5-year service plan will set you back $10,385, not $6,610. And that's why offering me a $9,000 plan is a discount. I don't know, man. From now on, if I go to one of those GT car meets and they try to say that my GTS isn't a GT4, I'm going to tell them to piss off. I have the same motor and I got to pay the same maintenance costs as one, so you better let me in. Okay, let's assume I don't negotiate a better deal and I buy the PSMP for $9K. Let's add that to the running costs. Actually, we should take that $9,000 and divide it across 5 years. So that's $1,800 a year of maintenance averaged. And we'll add that over to 23,614. Okay, that comes out to $25,414. That's my annual cost. Divide that by 5,200 miles, and that comes out to $4.89 per mile. Put it another way, let's say I only drive it on the weekends, and I drive about 100 miles per weekend on the local back roads. That gets me to the 5,200 miles that I did in the first year. I'm paying $489 every week for the car. That's nearly $2,000 a month. Actually, I pay that whether I drive the car or not. What do you think? Is that worth the money? I mean, aside from the minor electrical issues I'm having with the car, I do love driving this car. What price tag do you put on happiness? So maybe it's worth it, right? Well, the costs aren't going to go down. So let's say I double the annual mileage and I drive 10,400 miles a year. Add another $1,550 for gas. That comes out to $26,964. Divide that by 10,400 and it comes out to $2.59 per mile. Does that sound any better? I guess it's better utilization of the money spent. But I can't help but think that I enjoy driving my MR2 and my BRZ very much, and they're both way, way less expensive to own and maintain. So, what do you all think? Are my expectations unreasonable for this car? Am I paying too much for a car that I don't drive enough to justify? Could I be dumping that nearly $27,000 a year into building a 400 or 500 horsepower BRZ or MR2 instead? Or should I have just bought a Lexus LC500 and be content to roll through in-and-out drive-thrus with a roaring V8? Are the prepaid maintenance plans worth getting, or are they a scam? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I do read all comments, and I appreciate you all watching and for your support. Thanks and take care. I'll see you in the next video.